From the highlights' bone-shattering knockout power tearing through the division, to the secret wrestling skills he keeps up his sleeve, here's why fighters are terrified of Justin Gaethje. Well, for anyone who knows him, the first thought that comes to mind when you say Gaethje's name is his signature explosive striking, making fighters glad that paramedics are always on standby at the events. Justin is an expert at shredding through people with his fists. Even fighters with great pain tolerance try to block his punches, but their arms just can't handle Gaethje's destructive power. So naturally, they end up going on the defense, giving Justin control over the fight's pace. Even the best in UFC history can't help but admit how punishing Gaethje is, because Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's largely considered one of the greatest lightweights of all time, went up against him and came out of the octagon with the realization that Justin is the hardest hitter he's ever faced. According to the Dagestani, everything from his kicks to his punches were top-notch, and he hits like a truck. Even Dustin Poirier thinks Gaethje's explosiveness is unrivaled. You see, when the two fought the first time, the highlight was raining down leg kicks on Poirier back-to-back. And because Dustin was bad at checking them at the time, his legs faced the full wrath of Gaethje. Apparently, Justin dealt so much damage that Poirier walked out of the fight with his quad partially torn. After that, Dustin put in work and adapted his style to check kicks, so Justin really might have seared a fear of them in his mind. Hell, he's even sent amazing fighters like James Vick and Edson Barboza to the Shadow Realm with his deadly right hand. But what makes him terrifying is how expertly his fighting style uses his power to its full potential. You see, even the most gifted fighters lose to people with better fight IQ, but Justin has learned exactly how to use both to devastate up the competition. It's common knowledge in the UFC now that Gaethje has cannons for arms, so there's a level of intimidation he walks into the octagon with, and he turns that into a brutal weapon. Since fighters are watching out for every single punch of his feints become super effective, getting a big reaction, which he uses to create openings for his striking. It's a dangerous tactic for the victim because if you don't react to the feint and it actually turns out to be a punch, the damage you take could be match-ending. So either way, Justin comes out of the exchange with the upper hand. His confidence in his striking is especially relentless, and Poirier explained it best when he described Gaethje's style. Apparently, his kicks were insanely unusual, because when fighters use their legs, they have to hold back since careless kicking has major consequences. But Justin isn't your everyday fighter. According to Dustin, the highlight didn't care what would happen to him when he launched a kick. So, no matter what position or angle he was in, Gaethje would put his whole body into his kicks, which doubled both the power and the risk. But because of his do-or-die style, he dealt massive damage because of how unexpected his striking was. And if you want proof that his style works, just look at his outstanding professional MMA record. After entering the UFC, his insane performances quickly gained him fame. But before coming to the promotion, he'd actually never lost a single match. It's not like Gaethje fought less either, because before his debut in The Ultimate Fighter, he'd competed in 17 professional matches. Justin's MMA career started in 2011, and hell, he wasn't any less fierce back then either, winning his first match by a slam KO. Which is a rare sight to see in MMA, but it's a perfect example of why Justin isn't your average fighter. After that, Gaethje continued to make a name for himself as a knockout artist, racking up wins with every match. And for good reason, because one of his greatest feats is the fact that he's created legendary streaks of knockout finishes. His longest running streak went on for 7 fights, spanning 2 separate organizations, so he's become a sort of occupational hazard for fighters wherever he goes. Especially in his time at World Series of Fighting, Justin dominated the lightweight division, winning the championship title in his 4th fight in the promotion. But the real kicker is that he defeated everyone that came to challenge him, defending the title a total of 5 times. Heck, he left WSOF without ever losing his championship, heading over to the UFC to become the fighter everyone knows him to be now. Most fighters simply can't beat him, but it isn't for lack of trying. It's just because Justin has an incredibly strong chin and an equally unbreakable willpower. You see, for someone like Gaethje, he can't use his wild style in the octagon unless he's also willing to take crazy damage. Even when he was caught in an armbar in the Khabib fight, the Dagestani was well aware that Justin would rather let him break his arm than tap, so he had to switch to a triangle choke out of consideration. Apparently, with someone as crazy as Gaethje, his opponents seem to worry more about his health than he does sometimes. I mean, throwing constant haymakers like he does is hella exhausting, but somehow, Justin still manages to keep his pace up till the very last round, and that shows just how scary his stamina is. His fight against Michael Chandler is the best example of his endurance, though, because throughout the fight, Gaethje took some brutal hooks and flying knees straight to the face, but was still standing by the end. Heck, he even won that fight after it went the full distance by decision. Like, you can tell how insane he is just by his conversation with Chael Sonnen. When Chael told Justin he blocks a lot of punches with his face as a joke, Gaethje corrected him, saying he actually blocks them with his forehead. And as crazy as that is, he was actually serious too. It just tells you how ridiculous his pain tolerance is to actually apply that in the octagon. But even though he's relied on his reckless tactics in the past, Gaethje has slowly learned how to fight more technically as well. Seeing him fight in his signature style for so many years in the UFC, it's hard to imagine him fighting in anything other than a total slugfest. But as he revealed in his post-fight interview against Rafael Fiziev, his next run for the title might be his last, so Justin is going to start fighting more strategically from now on. His evolved style showed its potential at UFC 286, winning against Fiziev by decision with an outstanding performance. The highlight even talked about his growth as a fighter, saying that previously he used to bring his anger and rage into the octagon, believing it was necessary to perform at his best. But now that he has a better understanding of himself, believing he can channel his emotions into his combat with more control. Even his next opponent, Poirier, couldn't help but take note of his improvements, saying he got the impression that Gaethje's boxing had gotten better because he's learned how to use the jab more, and his lateral movement has gotten better too, which is insane because the Justin everyone had seen till now seemed to only move forward, and with him gauging distances with his jabs, his striking accuracy will get a definite upgrade, making him even deadlier. His previous opponent, Fiziev, seems to agree too because even though Justin played it relatively safe with him, he told the highlight that all of his punches were still doing pure damage. Unexpectedly, even this late in his career, Gaethje still has a few new tricks in his bag, or should I say old tricks. You see, Justin actually comes from a wrestling background that he doesn't always use in MMA. In the past, he stated that his mind doesn't always switch over to it, because he's distinguished between his wrestling and MMA days. But in his latest fight at UFC 286, he shot for a powerful double-leg takedown, laying his opponent on the octagon floor. So it seems like Gaethje is going to start adding a whole new skill set to his MMA arsenal. His next opponent, Poirier, has had a hard time against grapplers in the past, losing to Khabib and Charles Oliveira by submission. So honestly, if Justin pulls out his wrestling, combined with his already devastating striking, he might just take home the win. Gaethje even mentioned after his last fight against Dustin that he thought wrestling Poirier would drain out his stamina, but later realized he could have handled it with how much his cardio has improved. So if he manages to merge both his styles, the highlight might become a well-rounded nightmare for the whole lightweight division. So there you have it, fight fans. From the secret wrestling skills he's got up his sleeve to his bone-shattering knockout power tearing through the division. That's why fighters are terrified of Justin Gaethje.